warning before we begin. You might not want to watch this alone. What you're about to hear involves sealed reports, missing persons cases, and locations that remain active to this day. The forest has no official name. If you were to look at a map, you'd see nothing more than an ordinary stretch of protected woodland. There are no warning signs posted, no fences or barriers blocking the way. And yet, the locals, they avoid it. They know better, and those who don't, they learn why. The earliest records we have of this place date back more than a century. Letters and journals from early settlers describe strange occurrences. They wrote of trails that would shift and change overnight, landmarks that seemed to vanish into thin air, and a persistent, unsettling feeling of being followed by unseen eyes. At the time, these accounts were dismissed, chalked up to exhaustion, fear, or just simple folklore. But then, something changed. It changed when modern hikers began disappearing. Rangers and local authorities quietly started logging reports. People would enter the forest in the morning, full of energy and ready for a hike, and then simply fail to exit by nightfall. Search and rescue teams were dispatched. K-29 units were brought in, and over again, the same bizarre detail appeared in their internal notes. Footprints, boot prints, leading deep into the woods, and then, inexplicably looping back on themselves. They would find these strange, circling patterns, tight spirals, that made absolutely no logical sense. Some trails would end abruptly, right in the middle of a clear patch of ground, as if the person walking had just stopped existing, vanished. The locals, the ones who know the forest's secrets, they have their own warnings. They tell newcomers, don't follow the lights. They describe small, pale glows that appear between the trees, always seeming to be just out of reach. They float ahead, beckoning you, guiding you deeper into the woods. One sealed testimony from a park ranger describes a chilling experience during a night patrol. He was walking a familiar trail when he heard his own name whispered from the dark tree line. It was clear as day, but there was no one there. Another ranger, a veteran of the service, filed a report claiming his radio suddenly filled with the sound of breathing. It was slow, deliberate, and right in his ear, even though no one else was transmitting on the frequency. It was as if something was standing right next to him. As these incidents continued, many of the official reports were sealed away from public view. A strange phenomenon was noted by multiple search parties. The forest grew quiet at night, unnaturally quiet. No crickets, no insects, no rustling leaves in the wind. The only sound was the crunch of their own footsteps on the forest floor, and sometimes the faint echo of footsteps matching their own, just out of sight. By the late 1990s, the authorities took quiet action. They began reducing public trail access. Certain paths were completely removed from official maps. The official reason given to the public was conservation, an effort to protect the local ecosystem. But unofficially, for those who knew what was really happening, it wasn't conservation, it was containment. So, what is happening in this unnamed forest? Is it a geographical anomaly? A place where the laws of physics bend and break? Let's look at the patterns. The disorientation, the shifting trails, the feeling of being led astray. This has led some researchers to theorize about powerful magnetic fields or pockets of infrasound low-frequency noises that are below the range of human hearing, but can cause feelings of dread, anxiety, and even hallucinations. Could the forest itself be generating a signal that confuses the human brain, turning our own senses against us? It's a plausible scientific explanation. It accounts for the confusion, the spiraling tracks, but it doesn't explain everything. It doesn't explain the whispers. It doesn't explain the lights. Let's consider the local folklore. The stories passed down through generations speak of something ancient living within the woods. Not a creature of flesh and blood, but something else entirely. They call it a mimic, a spirit that imitates. It imitates sounds of voice, a footstep. It imitates light to lure you in. The stories claim it feeds not on the body, but on confusion and fear. It separates you from your path, from your group, from your own sense of direction, until you are utterly lost. According to these tales, the entity doesn't hunt you in the traditional sense. It simply unmakes you. It erases you from the world, leaving behind nothing but a trail that leads to nowhere. Think about the sealed reports. A ranger hearing his name, a hiker's footprints ending in a clearing. These aren't just stories. They are documented events that law enforcement and park services could not explain. The decision to remove trails from maps wasn't taken lightly. It represents an admission, a silent acknowledgement that they were dealing with something they couldn't control or even understand. They weren't just closing a trail, they were surrendering territory. One of the most disturbing accounts comes from a search volunteer. In the early 2000s, his team was searching for a missing college student. Deep in the woods, they found her backpack sitting perfectly upright against a tree. Inside, her water bottle was full, her phone was fully charged, and her keys were neatly placed on top. But the student was gone. The search team's dogs, trained for tracking, became agitated. They would follow a scent for a few dozen yards and then stop, whining and refusing to go any further, as if the trail had hit an invisible wall. The volunteer said the most unnerving part was the silence. It felt, in his words, like holding your breath. He felt a pressure in his ears, a heavy stillness that absorbed all sound. He never volunteered for a search in that forest again. What we're looking at is a phenomenon that defies a single explanation. It has elements that point to a natural cause, but also details that lean into the deeply paranormal. The magnetic anomaly theory is compelling, but it feels incomplete. The folklore of a mimic is terrifying, but it's hard to accept as fact. Perhaps the truth is a combination of both. Maybe a natural phenomenon, like an electromagnetic field, acts as a sort of antenna or a gateway for something else. Something that uses the forest's natural strangeness as a hunting ground. The forest remains there today, a quiet, green space on a map. To an outsider, it looks peaceful, inviting. But the trails that were erased are still there, overgrown, but visible to those who know where to look. The lights are still seen by people who live on the forest's edge, and every few years, another report surfaces. A car left in a parking lot for days. A hiker who signed a trail register but never signed out. The official response is always the same. A search is conducted, no trace is found, and the case goes cold. But for the people who live there, and for the few officials who hold the sealed files, it's not a cold case. It's a reminder that there are places in this world that operate by a different set of rules. Places that are not meant for us. The forest doesn't need a name, because its identity isn't defined by what we call it. It's defined by what it does. It takes, it confuses, it erases, and all it leaves behind is a story, a warning, and a trail that leads to an impossible end. Be careful which whisper you listen to. Some forests are more than just trees and soil. Some are aware. There's a place not marked on any modern map where the stories all start the same way. Those lucky enough to return describe a sudden, crushing exhaustion, a wave of confusion so thick it feels like fog in your mind. They talk about a feeling, an unnerving sensation that something is physically pulling the strength right out of their bodies, a force draining them, leaving them hollow. Survivors often report sitting down just for a moment to catch their breath. They blink, and what felt like a second was actually hours. They wake up completely disoriented, with a gaping hole in their memory, unable to account for the lost time. Think about that. You sit on a fallen log, feeling a bit tired, and the next thing you know, the sun is setting, and you have no idea what happened. One of the most chilling cases involved a hiker, an experienced outdoorsman. He was reported missing, and a massive search and rescue operation was launched. 3 days later, they found him. Alive, but just barely. The shocking part, he was less than a mile from the park entrance. He had been wandering in circles, just out of sight, for 72 hours. He refused all medical treatment at the scene, and has never spoken publicly about his ordeal. His journal, found in his backpack, was the only clue. It ended abruptly, mid-sentence, as if his hand simply stopped moving. What did he see that silenced him forever? What could happen so close to safety, yet feel a world away? Official investigations, of course, have been quiet. But leaks from inside tell a different story. Investigators who dared to stay in the forest past dusk reported seeing things. Shadows standing between the trees. These weren't normal shadows cast by the setting sun. They were solid, upright, and utterly still. The investigators said the figures didn't move in a traditional sense. They only shifted, repositioning themselves when you looked directly at them. A terrifying game of hide-and-seek. The figures would mimic the posture of the investigators. If they crouched, the shadows crouched. They mirrored their distance, their direction. It was as if the forest was creating its own team of observers. They brought in advanced technology, hoping for concrete answers. Thermal cameras, designed to pick up heat signatures, captured the opposite: cold spots. Patches of intense, unnatural cold, shaped like human silhouettes, scattered throughout the woods. Imagine looking at a screen that shows the warmth of living things, and seeing a person-shaped void of absolute cold standing right in front of you. What could cause that? At the same time, high-sensitivity audio recorders picked up a persistent, low-frequency humming. It was a sound buried just beneath the rustle of leaves and the sigh of the wind, a deep thrumming that seemed to emanate from the very ground itself. It was a sound that didn't belong. Perhaps the most disturbing part of this phenomenon is that for some, the forest doesn't let go. It follows them home. Former visitors, people who spent just a few hours within its borders, have reported unsettling experiences for months, even years, afterward. They hear the distinct crunch of leaves on pavement outside their homes at night. Even in the dead of winter, when no leaves are on the ground, they're plagued by recurring dreams of endless, suffocating trees, of being lost in a place that feels both alien and horribly familiar. In these dreams, they always see the same strange lights flitting between the trunks, and they always hear that same low, pervasive hum. It gets even more physical. Some of these individuals wake up in the morning with dirt under their fingernails, and mud on their bare feet, with no memory of having left their beds. It's as if some part of them, or something else is taking their body for a walk in the woods while they sleep. The psychological toll is immense. At least one lead investigator on the official case abruptly resigned. His colleagues said he became erratic, paranoid. He claimed the forest recognized him. He said it knew his name. Shortly after his resignation, all his footage, all his notes, everything he had collected was confiscated by an agency no one had heard of. The entire investigation was quietly shelved, and his findings were never released to the public. Officially, nothing is wrong. There is no official statement confirming any paranormal activity. There is no official statement confirming any deaths or disappearances linked to this specific forest. But the questions remain, hanging in the air, like the forest's perpetual mist. Families are still waiting for loved ones who went for a walk and never came back. The local community whispers stories, warnings passed down through generations. They know the truth, even if no one will admit it. So, let this be a warning to you. If you ever find yourself walking in a forest, any forest, and suddenly all the natural sounds go silent, the birds stop chirping, the insects stop buzzing, the world falls into a dead, unnatural quiet, you need to turn around and leave immediately. Don't hesitate. Don't try to figure it out. Just go. And if you see strange lights deep in the trees, lights that flicker and dance and do belong to any hiker's flashlight or campsite, do not follow them. Don't let your curiosity be your downfall. Because you have to understand, some forests don't trap people by accident. They aren't just dangerous places. They are selective. They are hunting grounds, and you might just be what they're hunting for. Thanks for joining us in the shadows. Subscribe to Tales of the Dark, where every story gives you a nightmare.